All Quiet on the Western Front, Chapter 5. It's a nuisance trying to kill every single louse when you've got hundreds of them. The beasts are hard, and it gets to be a bore when you are forever pinching them between your nails. So, Tiagen has rigged up a boot polish lid hanging on a piece of wire over a burning candle end. You just have to toss the lice into this little frying pan. There is a sharp crack, and that's it. We're sitting around, shirts on our knees, stripped to the waist in the warm air, our fingers working on the lice. Hi has a particularly splendid species of louse. They have a red cross on their heads. Because of that, he maintains that he brought them back from the military hospital at Tauhout, where he claims they were the personal property of a senior staff surgeon. He also wants to use the grease that is very slowly accumulating in the tin lid to polish his boots, and roars with laughter for a good half an hour at his own joke. But today nobody takes much notice. We have something else far too important on our minds. The rumour turned out to be true. Himmelstoss is here. He turned up yesterday, and we have already heard his familiar tones. Apparently he was a little bit too vigorous with a couple of recruits in the training field. He didn't know that one of them was the son of the chairman of the district council. That did it for him. He is in for a surprise. For hours, Tiagen has been running through things he wants to say to him. Hi keeps looking speculatively at his gigantic paws and winking at me. Beating up Himmelstoss was the high point of his existence. He told me that he still dreams about it. Kropp and Müller have been having a discussion. Kropp has managed to nab a mess tin of lentils for himself, probably from the sappers' kitchens. Müller gives it a greedy look, but gets a grip on himself and asks, "Albert, what would you do if all of a sudden it was peacetime?" "There's no such thing as peacetime," replies Albert curtly. Müller persists, "Yes, but if, what would you do?" "I'd bugger off out of it," grumbles Kropp. "Of course, then what?" "Get blind drunk," says Albert. "Don't talk rubbish, I'm being serious." "Me too," says Albert. "What else would there be to do?" The idea interests Cat. He claims a portion of Kropp's lentils and gets a whack, and then he ponders for a long while and offers the view, "Well, you could get drunk, of course, but otherwise it would be off to the nearest train and home to mother. Bloody hell, Albert, peacetime." He grubs around in his oilskin wallet for a photograph and passes it around proudly. "My missus." Then he stows it away and curses, "Lousy bloody war." "It's all right for you," I say. "You've got your wife and your lad." He nods. "That's true, and I have to make sure they've got enough to eat." We all laugh. "There won't be any problem there, Cat. You'll just requisition something." Müller is hungry, and he says that he still isn't satisfied with the answers. He shakes Himmelstoss out of his daydreams of beating up Himmelstoss. "Hi, what would you do if the war ended?" "What he ought to do is kick your ass from here to Kingdom Come for talking about that sort of thing here," I put in. "Where did you get the idea, anyways?" Where do the flies go in winter?" is Muller's brief answer before he turns to Himmelstoss again. Hi is suddenly finding it all a bit difficult. He puts his freckled head in his hands. "You mean when there isn't any more war?" "Dead right, you've got it in one." "Then there'd be women around again, wouldn't there?" Hi licks his lips. As well?" "Christ almighty," says Hi. His expression softens. "The first thing I do is pick myself up some strapping great bint, know what I mean, some big bouncy kitchen wench with plenty to get your hands around, then straight to bed and no messing. Think about it. Proper feather beds with sprung mattresses. I'll tell you, lads, I wouldn't put my trousers back on for a week." Silence all round. The image is just too fantastic. It sends tremors right across the skin. Eventually Müller gets a grip and asks, "What about after that?" A pause, and then Hi goes on, a little hesitantly, "If I was an NCO, I'd stay in the army and sign on as a regular." "Hi, you're balmy," I say. But he answers me amiably with another question. "Have you ever tried peat digging? Have a go sometime." With that, he pulls his spoon out at the top of his high boots and digs into Albert's mess tin. "It can't be worse than digging trenches in France," I reply. Hi chews and grins. "Lasts longer, though, and you can't skive off." "Come on, Hi, it must be better at home." Sometimes, he says, and sinks into a kind of reverie, sitting there with his mouth open. You can read in his face what he is thinking. A run-down shack on the moors, hard work on the hot heathlands from early in the morning till late at night, lousy pay, the dirty clothes a labourer wears. "In the peacetime army you don't have to worry about anything," he tells us. You get your grub every day, and if you don't pick up a fuss, you've got your bed, clean sheets every week, just like a toff. You do your bit of duty when you're an NCO, and you get all your gear. And in the evening, you're a free man, and you can go for a drink. Hi is extraordinarily proud of his idea. He falls in love with it. And when you've served your 12 years, they give you your discharge settlement, and you get to be a country copper, and then you're just out and about all day. This feature brings him out in a sweat. Just think about how they treat you then. A brandy here, a beer there. You'll never make it to NCO, throws in Cat. Hyde gives him a hurt look, and shuts up. In his mind, he's probably already enjoying the clear autumn evenings, the Sundays on the heath, the village church bells, afternoons and evenings with the girls, the buckwheat pancakes with bacon, the hours of aimless conversation in the bar. He can't cope with so much imagining all at once, so he just snarls angrily, "You and your bloody stupid questions." He slips his shirt down over his head and does up his battle-dressed tunic. "What would you do, Tjaden?" Crop calls across to him. Tjaden has only one thing on his mind. Make sure that Himmelstoss doesn't get away. Probably what he would like best is to keep him in a cage and set about him with a cudgel every morning. He urges Crop with great enthusiasm. "If I were you, I'd make sure I got to be a lieutenant, and then I could make him run like his arse was on fire." "What about you, Dettering?" Muller continues. He's a proper schoolmaster with these questions around the class. Dettering is the silent type, but this time he does have an answer. He just stares up at the sky and utters a single sentence. "I'd just get home in time for harvest." And with that he gets up and walks away. He is worried. His wife has to look after his small holding. Besides that, 2 of his horses have been taken from him. Every day he looks in the local papers that are sent to him to see whether the rain has started yet in his little corner of Oldenburg. If it has, they won't be able to get the hay in. Just at this moment, Himmelstoss appears. He comes straight up for our group. Tjaden's face goes blotchy. He stretches out in the grass and shuts his eyes because he is so worked up. Himmelstoss wavers and slows down. Then he marches towards us. Nobody makes any move to stand up. Crop looks at him with interest. He stands right in front of us and waits. And when nobody says a word, he comes out with a "Well?" A few moments pass. Himmelstoss clearly has no idea how he should behave. What he should most like to do is bawl us out good and proper, but for all that he does seem to have learnt already that the front is no parade ground. He tries again, and instead of addressing us, he picks on one of us in the hope of getting an answer more easily. Crop is nearest to him, so he gets the honour. "Well, well, you here too?" But Albert is no friend of his. He gives the sharp retort, "I reckon I've been here a bit longer than you have." The gingery moustache twitches. "I suppose you lot don't remember me then?" Tjaden opens his eyes. "Oh yes, we do." Himmelstoss turns to him. "Tjaden, isn't it?" Tjaden lifts his head. "And do you know what you are, chum?" Himmelstoss is taken aback. "What do you mean, chum? I don't think I've ever drunk ourselves into the gutter together." He has absolutely no idea of how to cope with the situation. He wasn't expecting this open aggression, but for the moment he is cautious. Someone has clearly fed him that nonsense about NCOs getting shot in the back. Tjaden has been made so angry by the crack about the gutter that he becomes positively sharp. "No, you were in the gutter all by yourself, pal." By now Himmelstoss is seething with rage as well, but Tjaden rushes to get in before him. He has to say his piece. "You want to know what you are, chum? You're a shit. That's what you are. I've wanted to tell you that for a long time." The satisfaction that comes from the mouths of the waiting is the shining in his piggy eyes when he comes out with the word shit. Himmelstoss lets fly too. "What do you mean, you miserable little sod, you filthy blood peasant? Stand up and stand to attention when a superior officer is speaking to you." Tjaden gives a gracious wave of his hand. "You may stand easy, Himmelstoss. Dismiss." Himmelstoss turns into a raging mess of drill regulations. The Kaiser himself couldn't be more insulted. "Tjaden!" he screams. "That is an order. Stand up." "Anything else you'd like?" asks Tjaden. "Are you going to carry out my order or not?" Tjaden gives an unworried and conclusive reply, quoting, although he doesn't know he's doing so, one of Joff's best-known lines, the one about kissing a specific part of his anatomy. At the same time, he sticks his backside up in the air. Himmelstoss storms away. "You'll be court-martialed for this." We watch him disappear in the direction of the orderly room. High and Tjaden collapse in a great peat digger's roar. High laughs so much that he puts his lower jaw out of joint and suddenly stands there helpless with his mouth open. Albert has to punch it to get it back to normal. Cat is worried. "If he reports you, there'll be trouble." Do you think he will? Asks Tjaden. Bound to, I say. You'll get 5 days, closer rest at the very least, says Kat. That doesn't bother Tjaden. 5 days in Clink means 5 days rest. And what if they take you away and put you in Jug? Asked the indefatigable Muller. Then the war is over for me until I get out. Tjaden is a happy-go-lucky type. He never worries. He clears off with High and Lear, so that when the balloon goes up, they won't be able to find him for a bit. Meanwhile, Muller hasn't finished. He comes back to Crop again. Albert, if you really got to go home, what would you do? Crop is full up now. He feels more expansive. How many of our class at school would there be now? We reckon it up. About 20. 7 are dead, 4 are wounded, and 1's in an asylum. We could only get 12 together at the most. 3 of them are second lieutenants, says Muller. Do you think that they've let Cantorac ball them out nowadays? We don't think they would. We wouldn't let Cantorac ball us out anymore either. Come on, outline in the tripart plot of Schiller's William Tell, Crop reminds us suddenly, and roars with laughter. What were the principal aims of Göttingen poetic movement in the 18th century? Demands Muller with a sudden severity. How many children did Charles the Bold have? I put in calmly. You'll never get on in life, Bulmer, says Muller. When was the Battle of Zama? Crop wants to know. You are completely lacking in moral fibre and high seriousness, Crop. Sit down. C-, I throw in. What did Lycurgus consider to be the principal responsibilities of the state? Hisses Muller, pretending to fiddle around with his pince-nez. Is it we Germans fear God and no one else in the world, or we, Germans, I offer food for thought? Muller twitters back, what is the population of Melbourne? How on earth are you going to get on in life if you don't know that? I ask Albert indignantly. But he trumps this with, what do you understand by cohesion? We don't remember much about all that stuff anymore. It was no use to us anyway. Nobody taught us at school how to light a cigarette in a rainstorm, or how it is still possible to make a fire even with soaking wet wood, or that the best place to stick a bayonet is into the belly because it can't get jammed in there the way it can in ribs. Muller thinks for a bit and then says, it's no good. We'll still have to go back to school. I think it's quite out of the question. Perhaps we could just sit the extra exams under special regulations. You still need some preparation, and even if you pass, what happens then? Being a student isn't much better. If you haven't got much money, you have to study really hard. It is a bit better, but it's still rubbish and the stuff they fill your head with. Crop sums it up for us when he says, how can you take all that lot seriously when you've been out here? But you have to have some kind of job, puts in Muller, as if we were all Cantorac himself. Albert is cleaning his nails with the point of a knife. We are amazed by this genteel behaviour, but it is only because he is thinking. He puts the knife aside and says, that's the problem. Kat and Dettering and High will go back to their old jobs because they had them already. So will Himmelstoss. We never had one. And how is this lot, he gestures towards the front, supposed to prepare us for anything? What you need is a private income, and then you could go away and live on your own in the middle of some forest, I say. But at once I feel silly for coming up with such a daft idea. What will become of us if and when we do get back, wonders Muller, and even he is anxious. Crop shrugs. I don't know. Let's just get there first and then see what happens. None of us really has any ideas. What could we possibly do, I ask. There isn't anything I fancy doing, Crop answers wearily. One day you'll be dead anyway, and what have you got then? In any case, I don't think we'll ever get home. If I think about it, Albert, I say, after a little while, rolling over onto my back, when I heard the word peace, and if peace really came, what comes into my head is that I'd like to do something, well, unimaginable. Something, you know what I mean, something that would make it all worthwhile, being out here under fire and all the rest. But I just can't picture what it could be. The only possibilities are all this business with a job, studying, earning money and so on. They all make me sick because they were always there and they put me off. And I can't think of anything, Albert. I can't think of anything. All at once everything seems to be pointless and desperate. Crop takes it further along the same line. It will be just as difficult for all of us. I wonder whether the people back at home don't worry about it themselves occasionally. 2 years of rifle fire and hand grenades, you can't just take it all off like a pair of socks afterwards. We all agree that it is the same for everyone, not only for us here, but for everyone who is in the same boat, some to a greater, others to a lesser extent. It is the common fate of our generation. Albert puts it into words. The war has ruined us for everything. He is right. We are no longer young men. We've lost any desire to conquer the world. We are refugees. We are fleeing from ourselves, from our lives. We are 18 years old, and we had just begun to love the world and to love being in it, but we had to shoot at it. The first shell to land went straight for our hearts. We've been cut off from real action, from getting on, from progress. We don't believe in those things anymore. We believe in the war. There is a buzz of activity in the orderly room. Himmelstoss seems to have stirred them up. At the head of the little column trots the fat sergeant major. It's funny how regular CSMs are nearly always fat. In line comes Himmelstoss, hungry for revenge. His boots are gleaming in the sun. We stand up. The sergeant major puffs. "Where's Chardon?" "None of us knows, of course." Himmelstoss glares angrily at us. "Of course you know, you lot. You just don't want to tell us. Come on, out with it." The CSM looks all around him, but Chardon is nowhere to be seen. He tries a different tack. Chardon is to present himself at an orderly room in 10 minutes. With that, he clears off, with Himmelstoss in his wake. I've got a feeling that a roll of barbed wire is going to fall on Himmelstoss's legs when we're on wiring fatigues again, reckons Krop. We'll get a good bit of fun out of him yet, laughs Muller. That's the extent of our ambition now, taking a postman down a peg or two. I go off to the hut to warn Chardon so that he can disappear. We shift along a bit and then lie down again to play cards, because that is what we're good at, playing cards, swearing, and making war. Not much for 20 years, too much for 20 years. Half an hour later, Himmelstoss is back. Nobody takes any notice of him. He asks where Chardon is, and we shrug our shoulders. You lot were supposed to look for him. What do you mean, you lot? Asks Krop. Well, you lot here. I should like to request, Corporal Himmelstoss, that you address us in an appropriate military fashion, says Krop, sounding like a colonel. Himmelstoss is thunderstruck. Who's addressing you any other way? You, Corporal Himmelstoss, sir. Me? Yes. It's getting to him. He looks suspiciously at Krop because he hasn't had any idea of what he's talking about. At all events, he loses confidence and backs down. Didn't you lot find him? Krop lies back in the grass and says, Have you ever been out here before, Corporal Himmelstoss, sir? That is quite irrelevant, Private Krop, says Himmelstoss. I demand an answer. Right, says Krop and gets up. Have a look over there, Corporal, sir, where the little white clouds are. That's the flak going for an aircraft. That's where we were yesterday. 5 dead, 8 wounded. And that was actually an easy one. So next time we go up the line, Corporal, sir, the platoons will all parade in front of you before they die, click their heels and request in proper military fashion, permission to fall out, sir, permission to fall down dead, sir. People like you are all we need out here, Corporal, sir. He sits down again and Himmelstoss shoots off like a rocket. 3 days CB, reckons Cat. Next time, I'll let him have it, says Albert. That is the end of the matter for now. Instead, there is a hearing during the evening roll call. Our Lieutenant Bertneck is sitting in the orderly room, and he has brought us in one after the other. We have to appear as witness, and I explain why Chardon blew up. The story about wetting the bed makes an impression. Himmelstoss is fetched in, and I repeat my statement. Is that true? Bertneck asks Himmelstoss. He fidgets a bit and eventually has to admit that it is, once Krop has told the same story. Why did none of you report this at the time? Asks Bertneck. We say nothing. He must know himself how much of an effect a complaint about something as trivial as that would have been in the army. Can you make complaints in the army at all? Anyway, he gets the point, gives Himmelstoss a dressing down and makes it clear to him that the front is no parade ground, and then it is Chardon's turn for a stronger version. He gets a full-blown sermon and 3 days open arrest. Bertneck has a twinkle in his eye when he sentences Krop to 1 day. Has to be done, he says. He tells him with a tone of regret. He's a decent chap. Open arrest is quite pleasant. The jail was once a chicken run. Both of them can have visitors, and we agree at once to go and see them. Close arrest would have meant a cellar somewhere. They used to lash you to a tree, but that isn't allowed anymore. Sometimes we get treated like human beings. When roll call is over, Cat says to me, How do you fancy roast goose? Not a bad idea, I reply. We climb onto the munitions convoy. The ride costs us 2 cigarettes. Cat has taken careful note of the place. The shed belongs to the headquarters of some regiment. I decide that I will fetch the goose, and I get instructions on how to do it. The shed is behind the wall, only barred with a wooden peg. Cat cradles his hands for me. I put my foot in and scramble up over the wall. Meanwhile, Cat keeps a lookout. I wait for a few moments to let my eyes get used to the dark, then pick out where the shed is. I creep towards it very quietly, grope for the peg, and take out take it out and open the door. I can make out 2 white shapes. 2 geese. That's a nuisance. If you grab one, the other one will make a racket, so it'll have to be both of them. It should work if I'm quick. I make a jump for them. I get one straight away, and then a couple of seconds later the other one. I bang their heads against the wall like a madman, trying to stun them, but I obviously don't use enough force. The beasts hiss and beat out all around them with their wings and their feet. I fight on grimly, but my God, geese are strong. They tug at me, and I stumble this way and that. In the dark, these white things have become terrifying. My arms have sprouted wings, and I'm almost afraid that I'll take off into the skies, just as if I had a couple of observation balloons in my hands. And then a noise starts. One of them has got some air into his throat and sounds off like an alarm clock. Before I can do anything about it, I hear noises coming towards me from outside. Something shoves me, and I'm lying on the ground listening to angry growling. A dog. I look to one side, and he makes for my throat. I lie still at once and pull my chin down to my collar. It's a bull mastiff. After an eternity it draws its head back and sits down beside me. But whenever I try to move, it growls. I think for a moment. The only thing I can do is try and get hold of my service revolver. At all events, I have to get out of here before anyone comes. Inch by inch I move my hand along. I feel as if this is all going on for hours. Every time I make a slight movement there is a threatening growl. I lie still and try again. The minute I get hold of my gun, my hand starts to tremble. I press down against the ground and think it out. Pull the gun out, shoot before he can get at me, and get the hell out as quickly as possible. I take a deep breath and calm myself. Then I hold my breath, jerk up the revolver. There is a shot, and the mastiff lurches aside, howling. I make it to the door of the shed and tumble over one of the geese, which was flapping out of the way. I make a grab while I'm still running, hurl it with a great swing over the wall, and start to scramble up myself. I'm not quite over the wall when the mastiff, which has come to itself again and is there jumping up at me, I drop down quickly. 10 paces away from me stands Cat with the goose in his arms. As soon as he sees me, we run for it. At last we can get our breath back. The goose is dead. Cat saw to that in a moment. We want to roast it straight away before anyone realizes what's happened. I fetch pots and some wood from the huts, and we crawl into a small deserted shed that we know about and which is full for things like this. We pull a thick covering to block the only window hole. There is a makeshift cooker there, an iron plate laying across some bricks. We light a fire. Cat plucks and draws the goose. We put the feathers carefully to one side. We want to use them to stuff 2 small pillows, with the motto, "Sweet dreams though the guns are booming on them." The barrage from the front can be heard as a dull humming all around our hideout. Firelight flickers on our faces, shadows dance on the walls, airmen drop bombs. At one point we hear a muffled screaming. One of the huts must have been hit. Aircraft roar. The rat-a-tat-tat of machine guns gets louder, but our light can't be seen from anywhere outside, and so we sit facing one another, Cat and I, 2 soldiers in shabby battle dress, roasting a goose in the middle of the night. We don't talk much, but we have a greater and more gentle consideration for each other than I should think even lovers do. We are 2 human beings, 2 tiny sparks of life. Outside there is just the night, and all around us, death. We are sitting right at the edge of all that, in danger but secure. Goose fat runs over our fingers, our hearts, and are close to one another, and time and place merge into one. The brightness and the shadows of our emotions come and go in the flickering light of a gentle fire. What does he know about me? What do I know about him? Before the war we wouldn't have had a single thought in common, and now here we are sitting with a goose roasting in front of us, aware of our existence and so close to each other that we can't even talk about it. It takes a long time to roast a goose, even when it is young, and there is plenty of fat, and so we take turns. One does the basting while the other gets a bit of sleep. Gradually there is a wonderful smell around us. The noises from outside all merge into one another, become a dream which disappears from the waking memory. Half asleep I watch Cat as he lifts and lowers the basting spoon. I love him, his shoulders, his angular, slightly stooped frame. And then I see woods and stars behind him, and a kindly voice says words to me that bring me peace. Me, an ordinary soldier with his big boots and his webbing, and his pack, who is making his tiny way under the stars' great vault, along the road that lies before him, who forgets things quickly and who isn't even depressed much any more, but who just goes onward under the great night sky. A little soldier and a kindly voice, and if anyone if anyone were to caress him, he probably wouldn't understand the gesture anymore. That soldier with the big boots and a heart that has been buried alive, a soldier who marches because he is wearing marching boots and who has forgotten everything except marching. Aren't those things flowers over there on the horizon in the landscape that is so calm and quiet that the soldier could weep? Are those not images that he has not exactly lost, because he had never had them to lose? Confusing images, but nevertheless of things that can no longer be his. Are those not his 20 years of life? Is my face wet, and where am I? Cat is standing in front of me. His gigantic, distorted shadow falls across me like home. He says something softly, smiles, and goes back to the fire. Then he says, "It's ready." "Okay, Cat." I shake myself. The golden brown roast is glowing in the middle of the room. We get out our folding forks and pocket knives and carve ourselves off a leg each. We eat with army issue bread that we dip into the gravy. We eat slowly and enjoy it to the full. Like it, Cat? Great. How about you? Great, Cat. We are brothers, pressing one another to take the best pieces. And when we have finished, I smoke a cigarette and Cat has a cigar. There is a lot left over. Cat, how about taking us a bit over to Crop in Chardon? Right, he says. We cut off a chunk and wrap it up carefully in newspaper. We were planning to take the rest back to our billets, but Cat laughs and just says, "Chardon." I agree that we'll all have to take it all. So we make our way to the hen run prison and to wake up the pair of them before we pack away the feathers. Crop and Chargen think that we are a mirage, and then they get stuck in. Chargen is gnawing away, holding a wing with both hands as if he were playing a mouth organ. He slurps the gravy out of the pot and smacks his lips. "I'll never forget you for this." We walk back to the huts. There is a great sky again, and the stars, and the first streaks of dawn. I am walking beneath that sky, a soldier with big boots and a full belly, a little soldier in the early morning, and beside me walks Cat, angular and slightly stooping, my pal. The silhouettes of the huts loom over us in the dawn light like a black and welcome sleep.